Hello. Welcome back to Baki Talki. It's been a while. This is, of course, our one of my favorite episodes, the April 1st episode. So I do have a fun prank that we're going to do in a little bit, but I wanted to give an update on what's coming next for the podcast. So you may have seen it. There is a movie coming out for Baki this summer. On June 6th, Baki is having a crossover movie with Kengan Ashura, which is another Netflix dudes fighting each other anime. I've watched a bit of Kengan Ashura. It was interesting. I just got distracted and didn't finish it. So I'm going to catch up so I'm fully prepared for the movie. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think it's going to be quite as good because I think the draw of Baki is how much you can feel the author's intent, and I don't think Itagaki is going to be attached to this at all. I also think Baki should just stomp, and I think that it's like when the Hulk fights Superman. You got to make it seem fair, or else it's not interesting. Interpret that as you want. Who I think would win in a fight. But yeah, June 6th it comes out. I'll have an episode out the Monday after that, and potentially more. I haven't decided what I want to do, but because this is a movie, it's going to be somewhere between 1 to 3 episodes. But yeah, look forward to that. The odds are there's no other Baki content coming out this year because Netflix announced everything for the year. But it does make me more optimistic that it'll come back in 2025 or 2026 because these type of movies, it feels like it's trying to keep the brand alive in between seasons. So good news on that front. From the other content front, I know I talked about making YouTube videos, and I did actually make a YouTube video. It's like 21 minutes long. It's pretty well edited. But in the process of making it, I realized that it is only really feasible to do while I'm on parental leave. I'm recording this on like my last day of parental leave, honestly. Once I go back, it takes so long to make a YouTube video. It takes like 60 minutes of editing to make 1 minute of good content. And spoiler alert, the podcast does not have the same ratio. Well, I guess I wouldn't know because I don't make a minute of good content. But basically what I'm saying is I'm going to try and find something else creative to work on in the meantime. Maybe I'll update here. Maybe I'll update around June once I've figured it out. And I already have episodes coming. I do feel bad. I feel like I talked about making a YouTube video bunch. So I do have one that's finished. I don't feel like promoting it much because it's only the first part of a 3-part series that I don't think part 2 or 3 will ever be made. So if you want to listen to it, I'm going to post a link to it in the Discord. And if you haven't joined the Discord, I will post a link to it in the podcast. So hopefully those 3 steps of difficulty will make it so that I don't feel bad for showing people an unfinished product because you really got to dig for it. All right. So first off, I have to put out a huge thanks to our good friends of the show, Max and Matt. First off, I want to plug a podcast that Max and Matt coincidentally are just launching. I think episode 2 or 3 is out at the time this comes out. It's called Pod Jobs. You can find it on most podcast apps. I couldn't find it on Apple Podcast yet. I think they're working on that, but it's on Spotify. It's on SoundCloud. It's on Instagram. It's just them talking about odd jobs they've had. I enjoy it. The first episode is just them, and then they bring a guest. And let me tell you, that was an interesting interview in a way that I don't think I've ever gotten out of my guests. I was hooked. So give it a shot. I think anybody who's listened to this podcast knows that Matt and Max are 2 of our most reliable, funny guests, and I think their new podcast is great. For this prank, Matt was in on it with me and Lindsay, and we decided to make Max our victim. But first, before I can explain the prank, I have to explain one of my favorite shows, Uma Musume Pretty Derby. I just want to be on the record here. I don't think Uma Musume Pretty Derby is a bad show. I actually think it's really well made. I think there's a lot of passion into it, and I think it's so creative. The idea of taking real horses, turning them into basically high school girls, and then having them run the exact same races. The commentators of the races in the show are saying word for word what the commentators said in real life. I think that it is a show with a lot of passion put into it, and it creates a very weird, a very unique show, and I don't think it's bad. But I do think that, especially if you've only watched one episode, this is one of the weirdest shows to be dropped into, and that's why we chose it for this prank. So what we did is I worked through Matt because I figured if I talked to Max, he would just see through me immediately. So I didn't actually talk to him for a few weeks right up until the actual recording of the podcast. But what Matt communicated is that this is a new podcast that I'm working on, very similar to Baki Talki, but this time we're talking about that horse girl anime. But when he showed up, and I got Lindsay to be my co-host, had some legitimacy here, is that we pretended that we were doing a podcast called The New Millennium Canon, and we dropped this on him during the record. He didn't know that this was it before, and that we're here to talk about serious works of art. Like the previous week, we would have done 12 Years a Slave, and the show is our guests bring a show to us that they think needs to be canonized, like new content that really deserves recognition. And we frame it that Max has actually brought us Uma Musume Pretty Derby, and that it's his pick that he sees to be an equal in artistic measure to something like 12 Years a Slave. I thought we'd get about 2 minutes before Max, goes, "What the hell are you saying? I didn't say that." He was such a professional guest that I think it takes about 18 minutes before he even slightly rebels against the premise. And to be clear, we are putting words in his mouth this entire interview, and I guess it's his improv training. He just yes ands so professionally. I can't give him enough props for being such a great guest to such a horrible interviewer like myself. So yeah, I wanted to add this little explanation here because it almost sounds like there isn't a prank. It goes so smoothly, but you have to remember, Max thought we were here to rip into Uma Musume, not to canonize it. I also just wanted to add a bit of context to the episode because we go into this a lot. There's a character called the Trainer. He mellows out as the show goes on, but suffice to say, he is the worst in the premiere. He has this gag where, like with a real horse, you might go and like touch their thighs and like, feel their muscles. He keeps doing that to Special Week, the main horse girl. Which of course is insane. The reason I say melts out is because I feel like the writers realize like if he keeps doing this, nobody's going to watch this show. Anyway, the episode's very straightforward. Special Week is a horse girl. She goes to a horse academy to learn how to run. She meets the trainer. That's more or less it. We don't get too much into the specifics of the plot. But yeah. Hope you enjoy. Listen to watch Uma Musume if you want to get more context. It's a good show. And yeah, this just remember that Max is trying very, very hard to help a ridiculous premise. So enjoy. Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the New Millennium Canon, a show where we are discussing shows from the past 24 years that we think need to be given a bit more time in the spotlight and potentially canonized for future generations. So, with me as always, I have my co-host Lindsay.
Hello.
So, Lindsay, this is episode 3, if I keep to the recording order that I'm planning. So, we've already talked about Roots, and we've already talked about 12 Years a Slave. This week, we have my friend Max coming on to the show. People might be familiar. Before this, I had an anime podcast called Baki Talki. I didn't think we'd be coming back to anime so quickly. I do think that there are a lot of works in there that are quite transformative. I didn't think it would be this one, but Max, tell us why this is your favorite show.
Let me tell you, Baki Talki was super fun, but this is the show for me. This is the show I was like, there's some juice to this show. One, there's just in the opening sequence alone with just what is like cave paintings of horse girls. And I was like, well, this is going to be something. And then it continued to be horse girls. And then what I thought was a Catwoman appeared, and it was still a horse girl. And then the world really opened up, and I started to ask, is this the most feminist show ever, or is this the most misogynistic show ever made? And it really challenged a lot of things in my mind, and I don't know if this is porn or if this is just, good haha fun, but I loved every second of it.
I mean, I was surprised when Steve said this is what we were doing. I was Yeah, I definitely think you have an uphill battle convincing me that this makes sense for the show, but, you know, I'm excited for you to try.
Well, that's the thing, you know, like I do sense that there's a lot of depth in this show. Like what Max is saying is true. I think there's some stuff you can say about gender identity. I don't know about the pornography. Do you want to go in on that?
Well, this is clearly, like, while this is hilarious and the show is very cognizant that it is a comedy, right? There's a lot of lines that are kind of winking at the camera and kind of acknowledging that this is a parody of other anime. At the same time, though, this has to originate as like some sort of fetish memory in somebody's head of these horsewomen. And then there's also no horsemen in this show. And then they keep them in cages before they race too, which was also very unique. There's a lot of things, and their hooves. They still had hooves, by the way, on the bottom of shoes, which I thought was a great detail for this show. I have, as you'll see,
I see you have a lot of notes on their feet.
A lot of notes on the feet. I have a lot of notes on perverts because the theme about perverts comes up a lot, which again I think is also them kind of the show being like, it's okay, we know what we're doing. It can all be, you're in good hands, especially the trainer's hands.
So are you saying it like it's a good representation of anime then because it's a kind of wink wink?
Yeah, I would say it is. It's really nice to see shows that are like bending the genre while also paying homage to it. Like a show that comes to mind is kind of like The Boys, where they're clearly subverting a lot of what superhero shows do, what the genre does, how they portray these different characters, and then with the Horse Girls, they're pulling in from so many things. Like they're pulling obviously that whole like academia storyline of different anime.
My Horse Academia.
I was gonna ask you guys, now that you're girl parents, what are your thoughts about like introducing Gwen to, you know, a school full of horse girls? Should she develop horse features of some kind?
That's an interesting thought, looking at it from the parents' perspective of the show, because we don't really see the parents very much, right? I think we see her mom.
In the first episode, they dance around it. So I did a bit more research on this. I watched another few episodes to try and see what made you choose this. But I found that the parents seem very supportive of their horse children, but they don't also like, what's the word? They seem very narrow-minded. Like, there's not much to these horses' lives beyond just running. So they seem, in that respect, more horse than girl.
I guess if the mothers are horses themselves...
Horse girls. They aren't horses.
Right. If they're horse girls themselves, then that would make sense, that they're pushing their dream on their kid, almost.
Well, so that's
an interesting
a fun thing. The horse... so our main character in this show is, of course, Special Week. And her mother is never shown, and I think that the reason is that they don't have the rights for it. So I wanted to get into this topic because this is where it gets a bit technical with the show. Did you know that all of these horses are real horses?
Like they're the names of actual real-life horses?
Yes.
No way, because now that makes a lot of sense. That makes way more sense.
You didn't even know that.
I didn't even know that.
It just resonated so much.
Well, I was like, Special Week is a wild name, but I didn't even put together that they would be emulating horse names, which are already wild. And
so that isn't even a part of the decision. Okay.
No. Yeah. That's a bonus, to be honest. This show has so many layers to it, and it surprises you at every turn. One is, like, I think the key to any anime is creating, like, and especially in a pilot episode, is giving you just a taste at the larger world and wanting to go more into it. Like, gosh, you go into the show with so many questions.
Oh, that's a good segue.
Oh, questions, yes.
Right, the questions you sent in.
Yeah. So these are questions. Matt sent them to me. I think you sent them to him. So these are... for new listeners who are a bit more familiar with Baki Talki, this is a bit more of a pre-prepared show. Like, we want to go into it with a bit deeper discussion than sort of off the cuff. We've all watched the show in advance. We've come up with questions to talk about. So the one question that I asked you who is your favorite character? I'm going to ask Lindsay as well, and myself. Well, I'll answer on behalf of the hosts. You said the trainer was your favorite character, which I found honestly a bit problematic. But could you maybe go into that?
Well, the thing about the trainer is, listen, people who know me know that I've been diving into romantasy recently, and we've gone through the Court of Thorns and Roses books, and one of those characters starts heel and turns good guy.
Like he starts feeling them at the heel and then goes up, or
yeah. I mean, he does actually worse things than going thigh first, which is honestly the boldest move I could see anyone doing to introduce themselves to someone, but it's just a whole redemption arc. And listen, there are flawed characters, right? You want these characters who can redeem themselves, who like kind of, this is like, well, maybe I don't know when this show is made, but it's like a Pierce Hawthorne type character, or I would reference like a Phil Dunphy character. Well, when you watch the early Modern Family seasons, like he's quite horny, openly and outwardly towards other people.
Yeah. I was gonna say he keeps it in the family.
No, I mean, there's episodes where they're asking like, oh well, where his wife is like, if I died, who would come and say, oh well, Annie, obviously, she's really good friends with the girls and everything. Or when new women move into the neighborhood, he's very quick. And so it's cute fun. It's a little pokey poke. There's some thigh grabbing, but the show acknowledges that it's perverted behavior, so that's a bit of a win. And I also think, like, in the humor of the show, like, he has to be, like, the team that she joins has to be bad. And it has to have fewer resources than the other coveted teams that I think is one of the characters is named Chonko, or...
Yep, Chonko.
It's not Chonko, but you know what I'm talking about.
The American horse.
The American girl. Oh, yeah. When she
El Condo Paso.
El Condo Paso.
Like, yeah.
And of course, she will from time to time have English dialogue.
Just as an aside, they nailed the English dialogue. I've seen so many shows lately where all they have to say in English is something like "Roger that," and it will come across as indecipherable. But yes, she is able to nail those one or two lines. I'll just say I think my favorite character is Special Week. She's the lead. There isn't a lot going on right there. When I see her being sort of let's just say assessed by the trainer, I more side with her side of things. But that's, the thing about like a show like this is it's so open to interpretation. Is I think what I have to take away from this.
I think what Max is saying is like it's using comedy to actually discuss interesting like themes and things like that, and is he objectifying her, or is she a woman, or is she a horse?
And
or
really, are either way they're being objectified.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And also shout out as another just character I love is Haru. Haru is wonderful. She's so slow.
Oh my gosh.
And it's fantastic.
I probably would have said her as my favorite. Yeah.
I did enjoy just watching her running slowly in the background. the show for
that goes back to what we were talking about as, like that's really her only option as a horse girl is to be a horse girl and run. And if she's not good at it, it's like, well.
Yeah, you got to run.
Yeah.
This is part of the world building though. You go there's got to be other occupations that these horse girls go down. Like they can't, like, obviously racing is huge, but the Olympics, like, these people would do very well.
Yeah, they might just be banned, to be honest.
Probably.
I don't think, like, a horse would do very well in our 100-meter dash, but we don't let them compete.
This is true.
Too bad.
It's too bad. I was wondering if they had, like, I was waiting for the stable apartment building, just a bunch of stables all the way down, and we never got to that, unfortunately.
That does sound like something this show would do.
Or the hay eating.
Yeah.
So that was the one question that I like to ask everybody. Just I think it's very simple. One gets the stuff flowing.
Yep.
But I do have a few questions that you wanted to start us discussing. So we'll start with, how do horse girls give birth? Is it immaculate conception, or do they need a man to step in,
we
or
talked about the parents.
Yeah.
So you were wondering more about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one that, like, how do they become horse? Mm-hmm. Is it a gene pool in that case? Like, because we know, like with real horses, they are actually bred to succeed.
Right. But there are male horses versus we don't see male horse girls.
Yeah, it's a bit of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
This is sort of a pre-gender fluidity type show.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Post-horse, pre-gender. So, yeah, I guess I'm just looking... Like, you asked the question, so I guess we have to answer it. I feel like it's probably just Immaculate Conception. Like, the intro talks about spirits from other worlds coming in as the horses. That's also alluding to the fact that these are real horses coming into this world.
I think it's just a horse girl and a man, and then they create more horse girls. That's what I think from the vibe I got, that they seem to have parents, and that theme is in there. And,
Yeah, and they're scouted like they would be high school athletes.
That's Gwen, if anybody can hear it.
Her first appearance?
Yes. Yeah, she's been quite calm before. Or more accurately, asleep. At this point, my lovely wife and co-host Lindsay had to step out of the room just to check on our daughter. We can keep going.
Yeah.
So, the other question that you asked, how old do you think these horse girls are? And you also noted that real horses start racing around 4 years old. First off, to me, it seemed pretty clear that they were supposed to be in high school. I don't really know why this would matter. So that's my question back to you is, what was your hang up around the ages of these girls?
Well, what you don't know is that my mom actually used to jump horses in real life.
She could jump a horse?
She almost could jump a horse.
What is that, like 6 feet she'd have to clear?
She had a pretty, she maybe was on the tennis team where they would jump nets, but she jumped horses in real life, and whenever I met some of these horses, you'd come up real slow, you'd put out your hand, you'd feed them carrots, and then you just you let them wander around, and I was just wondering, like, there's no free space for these horses, and at different times you got to judge them based on their age, right? And usually a horse, their peak performance, they're usually going to be about 7 or 8 years old. And so I automatically go, well, maybe these girls are a little past their prime here.
Yeah, maybe there is like an underground underage horse racing scene. I guess these are the type of things that, like, when a text is this deep, you can sort of just assume that's going on.
Well, the trainer is such a mysterious figure in that way. His service in the show is he's a mirror to everyone who watches, right? You can see yourself.
I wouldn't say that.
I can say that. I can confidently say
okay.
We've all been him. We've all pretended to smoke lollipops while watching horse girls train, and went for the thigh before the handshake.
Yeah.
And these are all, he doesn't live in our society, right? This is a time of old that he's recalling, that he's representing, right? And it's facing the real world head on.
I've noticed that you keep going back to the trainer, who wasn't really a part of that question. I get it. We all have different favorites. Okay, so you had 2 more questions. This one I'm going to interpret a bit, because I just got it in a message. You said, are you more of a Special Week man or a Silent Shizuka man? And I assume what you meant is the conflict in their 2 dreams. So Silent Shizuka, of course, said that she wants to be the type of horse girl that can create dreams. Well, Special Week was saying, I want to be the best horse girl in Japan. I'll answer and say that I think that Silent Shizuka was being a bit too esoteric. I would prefer to be the best at what I am. Probably not the best horse girl. I think it's a bit specific for me. But...
And that's why you'd bang her over Special Week?
What?
So no, that's not the question. Oh, sorry. It was I might have wrote that late at night. So so you're at, well, he just that? Sorry, Lindsay, you're back in.
Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, whatever.
What's happening?
I don't fucking know. Keep going.
We can cut that.
We'll cut later.
Well, it is an esoteric perspective. It's pretty meta, and honestly, I got pretty emotional. pretty emotional at that part of the episode because that's kind of the journey they're on, right? This is a funny show. This is a higher level, cerebral show, but at the same time, there's a lot of heart to it, and really, you can kind of see the foreshadowing of Special Week, learning the sweetness of what it means to chase your dreams and get to that concert stage, which is basically like the end of a Mario Party game where they award the special stars. I often get the red space star. And I think in some ways Special Week has been rewarded the red space star. And that's the journey that we're on when we get into this show.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think she's very special. So we just have one more question. And Lindsay thinks, thank you for handling Gwen, making her first podcast appearance.
The baby handler.
Oh, that is Mom.
So the last question, I have to interpret this one a bit as well. So you asked what do you think the over-under is on Special Week, and
I actually betting in general. I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, that's where I was going to turn this because.
Oh, I thought you were going to go age again.
No.
Is that what you meant?
No, that's not what I meant. I want to keep this on the gambling because I think that's actually really interesting. The thing with because the thing is, I think that this show was a collaboration, like all great art is, between a studio and a bunch of Japanese racehorse owners. And I don't think that I don't think they're probably allowed to sell this stuff with gambling. And so that's why I think the racing or the singing competition was added to the end to give a prize that wasn't related to gambling.
Or money.
Yeah.
Well, again, the world has changed. The world has changed since this show. And, gambling is so relevant now. I mean, almost every other ad on TV or on the internet is about gambling.
In Canada especially, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, the unique part about this show is, that's kind of, the undescribed element, right? That kind of lingers in the background is what is the corporate part of this, which is why, Suzuka's, dreams angle is so important because it combats that, that corporate finance, that kind of capitalistic, underbelly that poisons a lot of
good old-fashioned horse racing.
But over under, let me tell you, I would be betting on these horses and these horse people. And I think the trainer, I wouldn't be surprised. And again, he's a complicated figure that he has some bets on the side, right?
Yeah.
I the show, I don't know if it finished, but, I think it would maybe eventually get into some of the underbelly of that and exploitation, right? Because that is another theme that kind of faces this show.
I could very much see you betting on these. I think over a long period of time, I think you could turn $10 into $1 on this.
You think the betting would be a bad choice for them to...
I think it would be tough. I think it's tough, especially, how do you predict who's going to win these races?
Right. I guess you don't have the same access.
Not all of us can go around and feel their thighs.
True. Yeah.
That is a key, but that's a key element, right? Because that is the largest muscle in the leg, in the thigh. That's the largest muscle they use.
I feel like I don't know enough about our regular horse racing to equate it, but it does bring up more questions, honestly.
Yeah. All right. That's most of what we had to discuss. So, Max, I'm going to give you a chance just for any final words, and then I'll sign us off.
Final words I would say are that I love how they designed the stadium after the Harkonnen world from Dune. I thought that was a really cool element. Again, all the different material and media.
It's an incredibly large stadium.
Incredibly large, incredibly oppressive. I touched on the Mario Party part as well. Obviously, there's a Pokemon element here, trying to become the best there is. They're all dressed like Sailor Moon. It is this, in some ways, this pop culture just kaleidoscope of different things. And then finally, I would love to say that Team Spica really changed me, and I've really started to incorporate the word polish or the verb polish when referring to improving and mentoring other people, that I'm polishing them up.
Yeah.
And those are the big takeaways from this show, and I appreciate that we get to have this space to talk about it.
I just want to say before we finish that you brought up a lot of really good themes. Steve doesn't tell me what you've sent in advance, and I didn't know a lot of things we're going to talk about, and these were actually quite a few more points and relevant stuff. So I think you've convinced me that this deserves to be on the podcast. This is,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Max, for coming on. Make sure to check in next week. We're going to talk about The Wire. And that'll be on April 8th because this will be our April 1st episode. And that's all the Baki we've got to Talki. I'll see y'all next week.